I want to share 6 moments that I look back now with VSCO and have been really defining, both in my life, things that I learned and ways that I failed, as well as changed kind of how we viewed and how we approach VSCO. And so I hope it's helpful and useful if you're looking to start your own company or if you are interested in brand or design. That's generally the wheelhouse that I play in. So first off, our mission is to empower culture creators. And culture creators is pretty broad. It can be everyone from a photographer to a designer, but we view it as the people that things happen around. They're pushing things forward, they connect people, and that's who we want to build for. So how do we do this? We do this in a few different ways. And we try to approach it really holistically. We do it through the tools, we do it through a platform or a community, and we do it through what we call a creator network. From a tool standpoint, what we're talking about is your photo editing tools. Most people know us for Lightroom or Photoshop presets, or they know us as oh, that's the photo filtering app that hashtag VSCO, hashtag VSCOcam that I see on Instagram. What is that? And so that's one part of what we do. Those tools are really important to us. We are mobile first focused because we really believe in the idea that everybody can have the opportunity to take photos. When I first started, it was on film, and it was so expensive. I'd be every time I took a shot, I'd be oh gosh, oh no, and I'd overthink it. And so the fact that people have opportunity with a mobile phone it still kind of blows my mind, and that's something I don't take for granted. From a community side of things, it happens in 2 ways. From an app standpoint, we have a platform, and we want people to feel free to create and take creative risks in doing so, and also discover other interesting content too. And then from a physical side, we call them creative sessions, and so lately we've been partnering with Apple, and think of it as just a fun way to come in and learn about photography. We try to keep it around 40 to 50 people. We bring people in from our community to teach, and then we go out and we actually take a portrait or do whatever. And so it's a lot of fun. And then the last part is really integral to what we do, and it's what we call the creative network. And our goal is, it's not just good enough to give people the tools, it's not just good enough to give them the platform, but coming from graphic design, and then Joel, my co-founder, a photographer for 10 plus years, it's really freakishly hard to get started actually making money and making a career out of that. And so we want to connect these creators to brands to help them get jobs, and then brands are always looking for great content and always looking for great people to interact with. And so we want to almost be, I cringe to say it, almost like the Tinder of creative matchmaking. So this is an example of what we do with brands, and this is something we did with Nike called The Force is Female, and we highlighted 5 really just powerful, dynamic women from the VSCO community, and they created all the work and took portraits of themselves and their friends, and it tied into the launch of their shoe, the Air Force One. And so that's an opportunity where, yep, from a brand perspective, they win, they get real, authentic content, but it is real, authentic content because it's highlighting people that are phenomenally and awesome. It's not this fake manufacturedness to it. And we can do this because for the past 5 years, we've had curators, real human people, that are going through all the stuff that's uploaded, and they're starring it, they're tagging it by location, by who's creating it, etc. And then we tie that into what we call AVA, which is essentially an algorithm that helps us find and search that content. So, for example, if a brand comes to us and says, I need an 18-year-old in Brazil who loves soccer and is really good at taking photos, we can say, hey, here's 10 we think that'd be awesome, and we work with that process from a legal standpoint, like, because contracts are the craziest things ever, especially, like, man, I remember when I was doing freelance design and I'd get a contract and I'd be like, sign it, I'd be like, I have no idea what this says. And so we can, in a way, protect them and ensure that they're getting paid a fair wage for the great work that they create. So we build for these cultural influencers, these cultural creators. Pretty cool. We're experimenting with video and keynotes. It's pretty awesome. There are 45 million monthly people that use VSCO. We're young. 75% are under the age of 25. 75% is female, which I can touch more on that. It's something we're really proud of. 80% is global. And then 70% of the people that come to VSCO are actually creating original content. And when I say original content, it's like their own stuff, not things that you found on like Google and reposted. So we have this amazing young, international, hyper-creative group of people. So that's kind of to give you the lay of the land. And now I want to dive into these 6 moments of things that really were defining for VSCO. And so I put dates on them. They're just general approximation of dates. Like I was going back through my old like moleskins and like, okay, I think this was about here. But either way, I think it can give you a snapshot of where we've been and how we've grown in our thought process. So we started in March 2011. And Joel, my co-founder, was a photographer. I was doing design for like the music industry. And this is back in the era of like Flash websites. And like, just like, I did a lot of like hip hop and like indie stuff. And so a lot of spinning wheels with bling on it and a lot of like super long Flash intros. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I did this super long, at the time I was like, oh, this is the sickest thing ever. Thing for Jimmy Eat World that was this desert landscape, and it started in the day, and if you watched it, it would turn to the night, all that. But then at the bottom, in like overly huge words, is like powered by Asterisk Studio, which was the design studio that I was at back before there was better taste and people didn't do that. But either way, he found out about us because he was like, I love Jimmy Eat World. And if you don't know Jimmy Eat World, I think they're a phenomenal band. None of the kids know them these days, but it's awesome. And so he connected with us, and we started just talking about things. We worked together on a couple projects that I did some design for him. And I always stayed in touch with him, which was honestly a little weird because I usually didn't do that. But as we started talking more and more, we just didn't feel that there was any really strong company or major force that really truly like stood by the creators. You had companies that would provide tools, but we wanted something that holistically approached everything that it means to be a creative person. Because in our experience, and it was the creators are always the ones that get screwed in the end. And so we wanted to build a company that was really all about supporting and fostering these creatives. And so this is a little phrase that has really become like our North Star. And it's, if we win together. And what we mean by that is if VSCO is going to be successful, we want to do it alongside the creator, that we are part of this creative class. We're not just a company that's on the outside like throwing, here's like some tools, why don't you buy them? But we want to be part of that. And so this phrase, if we win together, hopefully as I'm talking, you should always see that like wound into how we approach VSCO and what we do. By the way, I guess you can't really see, all the photos that I'm using today are via people within our community, so it's pretty awesome. Anyways, so that was moment 1, and that's really the foundation of who we are. Second one, moment number 2. I just wanted everyone to know I was 1997 homecoming king. I know, it's no big deal. So um, when you look back at something like that, in a school of 100, so, I wasn't that cool. It's kind of embarrassing. It really is. But at the time, I remember being like, dang, man, I felt awesome, right? And if you apply that to a lot of how we approach social media today, it's that same idea of like, man, I'm going to assign popularity value to a person or to a person's work based on numbers. And that always felt kind of weird to us. And so in 2013, it was I think in like June or July, we launched what we called VSCO Grid at the time, which we just call it VSCO now. And this was our community. And it doesn't have the social popularity metrics to it, meaning there's no public follower counts, there's no public likes, there's no public comments. And the goal with that is to just allow people to create without that. And I was talking to a photographer and he's like, man, I really love shooting portraits. That's what really makes me feel alive. And I was like, that's kind of weird because you don't ever show that. He's like, well, yeah, because on Instagram, portraits don't get likes. And so I just show landscapes because I know landscapes will get me the likes and comments. And that just kind of made me a little bit sad thinking about that what he enjoys and what he loves as a creative was being so influenced by what other people think. And I do want to define the difference between like pure creativity and marketing. Like sometimes people are like, well, does that mean I should delete my Instagram? No, like there is a strong value in that. It's a great marketing tool. For us to focus, we wanted it to be more of a place where you could just take risks, where you could put 20 photos very similar at one time and almost span the feed, and it's totally okay with that. And just try new things without the pressure that we seem to put on ourselves of what other people think. It's not popularity as in social networks is not really good for honesty. It's not really good for creativity. It can be very good for marketing though. As a result, on VSCO, people feel a lot safer to take creative risks. They're a lot more honest about what their life looks like. If they want to take a picture of a road, that's totally cool, and you can try and you can experiment. If you want to take a selfie of yourself with no makeup, that's totally cool too. And the result is we get really authentic, real, honest content, and it's really wonderful to see. So the third moment that really, this is a little bit of a personal one. I'll probably get a little emotional. I feel all the feels. I'll just say that. But there are places that are not here and people who are not me. And so when we started VSCO, we were all about like we were building for ourselves, like, and we did. Like we made filters and presets because we wanted filters and presets, and the content that we highlighted, and because that's always been at the core. We always want to showcase what the community is doing. It largely looked like white dudes that stand on mountains and have beards. It kind of looked like me all the time, right? And almost unknowingly, we had created, this is what creativity looks like through the lens of VSCO. And it took, for me, there was a few things happened, but one was, I met a guy named Joshua Kissy who runs this blog called Street Etiquette, and if you haven't seen it, like check it out. Like it's literally the sickest thing ever. And I had never seen a black guy that dressed and articulated and took photos and had this amazing creativity like I've seen with Joshua Kissy. And through talking to him, through seeing what he did, we established a relationship, and we ended up like funding a movie that they did, a short film, doing a book, doing an art show. We've done a preset with them. But that relationship was huge for me because it made me realize, you know what, like sometimes creativity doesn't look like a palm tree against a white wall with a coffee and holding a Kinfolk magazine, which is totally cool if that's your thing, but like creativity comes in all different kinds of forms and from all different kinds of perspectives. And for me, that was a real big breakthrough. And in terms of the content that we show and the creators that we highlight, that was a really big moment for us. And as a result of that, VSCO has become so much more interesting and a place of discovery. There's a movie, Walter Mitty, and he works at Life magazine, and I love it's, I guess, their motto. I wish we could totally steal it, but it's like, to see the world, things dangerous to come to see behind walls, draw closer, to find each other and to feel. That is the purpose of life. And man, that's phenomenal. Whoever wrote that, props. But just the idea of being open to seeing different perspectives, and then the role that we can play as a company to highlight that and to collaborate with those creators was a real turning point for us. Moment number 4. So we bootstrapped for a while. Then in 2014, we raised Series A, and then later we raised a Series B, which I'm really thankful because it gave us an opportunity to do things that we would never have been able to otherwise. Also, strings attached to that money, FYI, but really thankful for it. And then we went into this like hyper growth stage where it's just like higher, higher, higher. And when you build a team, we went from like 40 to around 130, 140 really, really fast. And on one hand, it's cool because you have the arsenal, the resources to do that, to hypothetically move faster. But on the flip side, the organization and the structure and the communication that you have with 40 people does not work with 70, is complete chaos at 100, and is just like everyone's going out of their minds at 130. So we had to work on that, but I think one of the things that looking back on, and we have changed now, is how we hire and who we hire. And we used to be like, oh man, that person works at name a Silicon Tech Valley company you've heard of, and we're like, man, they're awesome. And by their resume, yeah, they were awesome. They were the best. But what we didn't account for is that sometimes just hiring by the resume is not how you hire a good team. So we had this phenomenally talented team of individuals, but no one was a team. And so we incorporated a new hiring system of how we did it. And we base it on values. And so our 3 values are, number 1, mission driven. You have to be all about empowering people to create, like not just saying it, that has to be a core of what you're interested in. 2, trailblazer. We want people to push things forward. Not that we have to try everything or we have to do everything new, but you need to be open to innovating and trying new things. And so that was point number 2. And then the last one is a team player. And hopefully if you come visit our office, you get the sense that people want to work together as a team. We used to call it no ego, but we really try to search for that. When people interview with us, we put them through like a full days of interviews. It's insane. I don't know how they do it. I'd be so stressed. But the things that we're looking for are these 3 things. Are they mission driven? Are they a trailblazer? And are they a team player? And those are really, really important. Yep, they've got to have the skills to back it up. But since we've started hiring based on the values that we hold important, how we work together and how we ship and make things is so much better. There's one guy I wanted to point out, and his name is Adrian. We met him. He was taking photos. We just started seeing him pop up on VSCO during Ferguson. And we're like, holy cow, this is like so real. And it's because he was from there. He was just documenting. He has a book called My Ferguson, My Lens, and he also does some art shows. So if he ever comes here, you should check it out. But what I love about Adrian, he's a curator and an editor for our community team, and he's really, really good at that. Really, really good at that. But what I love about Adrian is something that does not appear on his LinkedIn resume, and that is he's so good about bringing people together. And he does that by looking out for other people. He generally has this, like, I don't know what you call it. He's looking out for other people before himself. And having people like that within your team makes everyone actually be a team and work together. One thing that I thought was really cool is we do some work with an organization called Hack the Hood, and it's these high schoolers from Oakland that come in. And I was at an event at Pandora, the music thing, and this gal came up to me. She gave me a big hug, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, I don't know you, but she's like, VSCO, like, I got to tell you, because she had done an office tour through VSCO a couple years back or whatever, and she said, I got to tell you that Adrian, after we did the office tour, kept in touch with me and helped coach me, and now I have a job at Pandora. And I didn't even know about this at all. But that is a quick snapshot of like who the kind of person Adrian is. And you need those people within your team to work. Moment 5. And so honestly, I say August 2015, but like, man, we're probably still, you could probably say till present. And it's the idea of that, I'm really fascinated, I love music. But if you think about what music really is, it's a series of collisions, whether that's like, you know, a drum, like a drumstick with a snare, or even like strumming a guitar, it's a collision. And if there is order and direction and collaboration among those instruments, among those collisions, it's something that's really wonderful. It's music, and you can respond to it. If it's not, it's like, do they have like guitar centers around here? Like, have you ever been to Guitar Center and just like everybody's playing and it's chaos? You have like the Leonard Skinner dude, and then you have like, yeah, it's just like oh my gosh. That's what like our company was at some point. Like, we were just a little bit chaotic. And this largely applies to the tension that we had with product design, with engineers, with revenue. Like, you start getting a lot of people that, yeah, they're all here at VSCO, but they see the world through very different lenses. And I think it's just like one of, like, designers and developers, there's always that, every place I've worked at, there's always been a little bit of that tension. And so, but we had it to a place where we were not shipping. We had it to the place where I remember sitting in a meeting and there was raised voices and more than a few F-bombs dropped. It was just like bad. I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And so we realized that we had to do something really, really quick. And so what we did a lot of things, but we started doing leadership offsites a lot more with the goal to develop trust among the leadership team, which then would translate down. And we started being a whole lot more transparent with our team. So we have Scrum a couple times a week is what we call it, and everyone comes and we are really transparent about what we say, like everything from our finances to what we're working on to things that we messed up on when we failed. And that's really helped our culture be like, hey, it is okay to fail, but let's talk about it and let's work together. And Another thing we did is we moved the design team. The design team was over, we call it the magic area. It's like this, if you Google like VSCO Oakland office, you'll see all these like super beautiful pictures of an office. That never quite looks as clean as it does in the pictures, but whatever. And we were over there in that place, and then the developers are in like this dark cave because they like to work where there's not like light. It's super depressing, but whatever. But one of the things that we did is we moved our design team from the cool arty place, and we sit right in the middle now of engineers, developers, and product team, and that has helped a ton, just to sit across from somebody and to be able to talk and joke around. Part of that is we have like vertical teams, like I'm on the design team, I'm on the revenue team, but we still have those, but we've also structured it where we have horizontal teams, meaning you can be on the design team, but your focus, your team is, say, the community team. And so across the community team, you're working with curators to finance to all the teams that we have, and that's really helped change people's mindsets. We also established OKRs, which I'm totally forgetting what that even stands for, which is amazing. But basically, they're goals. They're goals. Man, what is that? Dang. Yeah, they're goals, guys. Totally. Before we would let the individual teams establish, like, what are you trying to accomplish for this quarter? And we still have that for accountability. It's important to have goals, but now we establish overall ones for, it's like usually 1 or 2 quarters. And that's just to be clear of like, this is what we are all going for as one team, design, product, developers all together. And that's really helps. And then the other thing is actually a really simple thing. We really try to talk in we's and us and using words like together and collaborate instead of I think this. And that really helps too. When you start using the words we in a meeting, it changes how people approach things. So have y'all ever seen like the TV show Silicon Valley? Like, okay, I can't even always watch it every week because it's so unbelievably stressful for me. It's not really, it's not a comedy. They say it's a comedy, but that is like the most documentary TV show I've ever seen in the world. In like one of the first things, this is going off track, I'll come back to this. In one of the first episodes, like he goes to a doctor because he's all stressed out, and the doctor pitches him an idea for an app. Literally happened to me. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. It was pretty funny. The idea for the app that the doctor told me was actually pretty good, but I was still like, I totally live in this. But anyways, in Silicon Valley, one of the things that's kind of the running joke is we can change the world, and it's just funny because it's this huge, great idea that really has no wings to actually get there. And the reality, though, is we do have very, very real monsters within the world. And they have different name tags, they have different faces, but they're definitely here. And I know everybody gravitates towards 1 or 2, and that's a good thing, because all the people in this room, if you just have 1 or 2 monsters to face together with other people, there's something really powerful about that. For me, it's I've had to learn, I get Twitter fingers really fast, and I like, oh man, this is gonna show people, or like thinking that like something that I tweet is gonna change the world, but really I've come to realize it comes a lot more down to the one-to-one relationships that we have with people, and even just treating people with kindness, treating people with respect. Seeing them as a person goes a long way, because I think the reality is like there are people that have real problems. And I mean, for me, like I get upset if I don't have Wi-Fi. That is not like a real problem at all. But there are other people there, and I know particularly, I don't know how many of y'all are designers, but there's the train of thought of like never work for free. And generally I would agree with that, but for a designer or as creative people or just as volunteers, like there are times that it is not just good, it's really, really important to use the skill sets that you have to contribute to the community, to fight the monsters that you have. And so I don't know if we can change the world. I don't actually know if I believe in that anymore. But I do think that we maybe can't even slay some of these monsters, but I do think it's important to just, you know, do a little bit of damage, kick them in the junk a bit. So I'd encourage you all to think about that going forward. So those are the 6 things that I've really learned over the past 6 years. And the last thing I'd want to leave you with is, I don't know, I would imagine a lot of you are more of the creative type here, and I would encourage you all to think about leadership, to think about entrepreneurship. If you have an idea, to figure out a way to do it. I think far too often creative folks sell themselves way short of what they can accomplish, meaning like, oh man, I don't know business, or I can't develop that. And yep, those are things that you for sure will need to figure out. But to give you hope, like I didn't go to Stanford. I went to Pikes Peak Community College and 4 other colleges to get my degree. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but if you go with like no quit attitude and figure it out, and you believe and you have a passion and you have a mission, I would really encourage you to do that. I've seen it way too often that creatives sell themselves way too short of what they can do. So I'll leave you with that. I know we're going to have some questions, but thank you so much.
So we'll take a couple of questions for a few minutes. To kick things off, Greg, I know you were doing creative agency stuff. Did you ever see yourself going out and becoming an entrepreneur and starting VSCO or your own business?
No, it was kind of more by accident and just through relationships and talking. But I operated more from like I was totally that art director who would like get a mood board or get like a direction and then it'd be like, these people don't know what they're doing. Like, like, they should do it this way. But I didn't really have context of how the whole business was run. So I do have a whole lot more grace to that. But I didn't really foresee that. And even when we started VSCO, it was very much a side hustle. Like, I always think it's funny, you like look at Wired or Fast Company and everyone looks like so self-assured and like awesome. Like pretty much every day I'm like, there's got to be someone better to run this. But I love it. And I think that's kind of been the driving force to have that mission of like, I don't know, it's awesome to meet a kid who's a fantastic photographer who is scooping ice cream to make a living, but then in a little way through either the tools or the connections being able to get them jobs and to help start their career is really what keeps me going. But yeah, no, I didn't really ever foresee it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What other questions might you have? Do you have one? Just kind of stand up and shout out. Jules?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was going to talk more about that and I literally forgot. Thank you. Yeah, so about a year and a half and 2 years ago, we were looking at all the content that people upload and we started noticing like, man, this doesn't look like, you know, these hyper cool creatives or whatever, but it was really interesting content. It was really real, and it was very much coming from largely teenage gals. And we were like, at first we honestly were like, we don't know what to do with this. we're like the hipster cool kids, what? And so, but what we started realizing is for the same reason that creatives were using our platform, because there's not all the public social pressure, is the same reason these teenage gals were. Because the reality is, it is brutal to be particularly a teenage gal in America today on social. If you ever have a chance for some really depressing reading, there's a fantastic book called American Girl. And oh gosh, as a dad of two girls, man, it messed me up pretty good. But the reality is, like, there's a lot of darkness going on, and so for us, we want to provide a safe place. No, there's no way that we can have a pure, safe place for anybody, but as much as we can, we put a lot of effort into what we call trust and safety to make sure that people feel the freedom to express and be creative, but not have all the shaming that is often associated with it. And you see a trend to Instagram. People have their Instagram and they have what they call a Finstagram, which is largely for their friends, and it's what's real and it's not for everybody. And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing almost this backlash to, man, I always have to look a certain way or do a certain thing. We do a lot of conversations with our community, and one thing that always comes up is like, if you want to know the real me, like, look at my VSCO. And so that's been something that, yeah, candidly, when we first started seeing that trend, we didn't exactly know what to do about. We were like, that's not our target market. But we actually have embraced it as an opportunity now to, because a lot of these gals are coming because their friends are saying you should check it out. But what's awesome is they're discovering they are freaking amazing photographers and creators. And so we have started doing a lot more education of, like, this is how you compose a photo and this is how you can take it. We also do a thing called Max Journal, which is just highlighting the really dynamic women on our platform to give good role models for these younger gals. So, yeah.
That's a great question. Yeah.
So you talk about this could be, a platform for creative freedom. So how do you censor content?
Yeah. So we have.
The question was, do you censor content on the platform?
Yeah. So we've had many debates about what that looks like, and we there's a lady named Heather Champ who's done this for a lot of other companies, and so we do have, there is a certain level that we have to be really protective about. We want open, free discussion, but there are certain lines that we have to draw to. Also, it's important to us to be from an Apple rating, like they have different ratings and stuff, so we try to stay, which is essentially equivalent of like a PG-13 rating. But we have we call it it's a grid of different types of content, and so that we're trying to walk that fine line. But like, I think one thing that I've realized is, as we've worked on that, is there's a lot. It's not as black and white as you would think. There's a lot of gray areas, and so we want to allow for that creative freedom, but we also need to be careful and protective, because there's there can be some really dangerous stuff, particularly as it involves, say, children and other things. So we try to find that balance. It's a good question.
What else do you have, Greg?
Talk about what sparked the idea for VSCO and what the process is like to create your film packs and how you choose what film you emulate.
Okay. Sorry, can you say that last part again?
The process to create the film packs.
Oh.
How do you choose what films you're going to emulate? How does that work? How do you make it?
Sure. So the question was, for our film packs, how are we choosing those, and kind of what the process is? And I can kind of paint in some broad strokes for that. One part is we actually have to have access to the real film itself. So we've developed some proprietary software, but part of it is we're not eyeballing things. There's a lot of research, like spectral data research, and I'm going to say some really cool words here that I don't fully understand, but I don't build it. I write the cool marketing about it, but I don't build it. And it essentially is we're creating like a mathematical model of how light reacts to different types of film. And so for that, we have to have actual access to that. So we have a lab, and we have this big old freezer, like just full. It looks ridiculous. It's just stocked with film, and then we have a lab, and we're doing all kinds of tests on that to try to understand. And the backstory of that is, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, why don't you like analog film, or you're going to kill it. We kind of view it differently. We view it more as our love letter, as like an archive of this, because we were just seeing. I still shoot film, but we were seeing all this film like just being killed. It didn't make sense for these companies to continue to build them financially, or to make them financially, and so that's what we set out to do. But yeah, so it's what's available to us is essentially how we determine what we're doing. I don't know if that answers. I'm happy to grab you afterwards. That was kind of vague, but.
What other questions? Right here.
Yeah, so there's kind of a two-part question about
Sure. So twofold question, and I'm probably going to forget the second one as I answer the first one. The first one is about the use of icons within our app versus text labels in relation to being widely an international app. Can you remember the second one? I'll talk this one first. Okay. So from an icon standpoint, from a whole UI standpoint, candidly, we are still trying to figure out a lot of things. We're willing to take risks and to try things. And sometimes it's worked well, and sometimes we've like messed it up pretty good. And so, but the idea is we want to continue to try to push things forward and try to innovate and walk that fine line. Like it's great to innovate, but it also is no good if no one knows how to use your app too. And so that's something that we're learning in that. As it relates to the icons, we do use a lot of icons. We also experiment with more text labels too, depending on, you might wake up one day and you're like, man, my app looks different, but not everybody else's app looks different. We can test different things. But I would generally agree. I think a word is much easier to understand than a text icon, just a regular icon. That being said, I do think it really did help the fact that we didn't have English everywhere for people, because maybe you don't know what the heck it is the first time you push it, but no matter what country you're in, if you click it and open it up and start playing with it, then you learn pretty quickly. But we are constantly testing that, and we have better capability now to, hey, this is Japan, this is going to be in Japanese, this is in German. Although German and Greek is hard as heck, man. Like tint saturation in Greek is like the longest word ever. Anyways, so there's challenges with that. As it relates to how we approach, the second question was kind of about essentially our design, our product and product design process and how we approach it. We've fundamentally changed, like literally almost 180'd that. We used to approach it as like, we are going to push things forward and essentially tell the community what they should use and do. And that worked awesome when we had a small community that had a very high level of tolerance for pushing things forward. It became a lot stickier when we started growing. I mean, like 45 million monthly people is a really broad range, and so you have some people that are like, oh, I totally get this, this makes sense, and other people that are like, WTF, I can't find anything. And so one thing that we've done is we've switched to what we call like a human-centric design process, and so we did very little like research, fancy way of talking to people within our community before, and now we do a ton of it. And so the challenge now is being able to sift through that and realize who we're building for. We are still building for that cultural creator, that forward-thinking person, but we also want it to be accessible. We failed if people literally can't figure out how to use the app. And so we're honestly right in the midst of that, and we're trying a lot of new things. We're more open to experimenting now. We have the capability. Before we couldn't experiment, we had to like launch something full on and hope that people liked it. Now we can actually test things and get a lot more feedback before we make that full on launch. So yeah.
That's awesome. We're coming down to the close of our time, so everyone give a round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you.